Hello, and welcome to episode 61 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parisi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and I'm jazzed up and ready to go for this one. You guys hear the intro music on the way in. We don't, but before Aiden hit the record button, he kind of hummed it, and that got me fired up. I'm kind of amped, and for this time of year, all things considered, that's pretty nice being amped up to go talk hockey. So, Aiden, how are we doing, fella? What's new? How's life?
It's okay. It's kind of been a weird last couple weeks. So I went through this whole process of travel to be able to get like Caitlin back to Red Deer to start school on time from our parents' places in Maple Ridge. And then I had to make it to Kelowna because the Hockey Night in Canada play on street hockey tournament was in Kelowna this year. I played 8 minutes of one game, James, and then it was over because of I don't know. Was there any NHLers that like just love to board people? Like the knee was Matt Cook's thing. The headshot was also Matt Cook's thing. But
Many things were Matt Cook's thing.
yeah. No, I just got stapled into the wall. Like my neck is still like it's hard to hold my head up straight, and it's been like a week now. It's this is tough. So it was an exciting weekend that ended pretty early, but I'm back in the saddle in terms of work, man. First game with the Red Deer Rebels last night, which was fun. Not doing broadcasting with them, just doing their social media, but I love being in that rink. It's nice.
How nice is it having that rink smell again? Like being able to smell the ice and just the atmosphere of the arena.
No, you're bang on, and it's again, it's those subtle things you miss, and those subtle things that like it's even just the type of cold it is in that arena is even just like a familiar reminder that yeah, all right, this is we're getting back into it. We're getting back into it now.
Yeah, I mean, it is that back into it time of year, and because it's in that back into it kind of year, I find a lot of people I know are okay. Actually, before I say that, I still think of years in school year form, even though I haven't been in any kind of school for a few years now. And most people I know haven't been in any kind of school since high school, and I find it this time of year every summer. All my buddies are trying to jam that one last trip in. So, Aiden, when you were in Kelowna, I was in Kelowna. And man, did I ever have fun. I got to do a fun little guys trip. We had an Airbnb right on the water, right on Okanagan Lake, our own dock. We had an Airbnb host that not a single noise complaint, even though we definitely deserved one a couple times. And always just checking in, making sure we're having fun, making sure we're able to use all the amenities offered. And Aiden, best part about this location, not even just what it offered, but right downtown, had a Lime scooter pickup and drop off right at the park next door. So we would just drive a scooter 2 minutes downtown, going full speed on these things, go drop it off, go have fun. Best time. And Aiden, I'm not someone who likes going fast. So I was kind of skeptical about these scooters. I hopped on this thing, not a single worry. No qualms, nothing, just ready to go. You go stop at a nice little rooftop bar. We went and had an awesome dinner at this place called King Taps. It is such a beautiful rooftop view. I got to go to the Craft in Kelowna. That is one of my favorite spots. Early into me being of legal drinking age, that was one of the first cool rooftop bars I ever got to experience back when I went to a festival called Center of Gravity. And yeah, man, just an awesome time. And the people in Kelowna seem to just want you to have fun too. So um just outside the craft as well, I had a cool little hockey connection. I got to meet one of the guys from the Empty Netters podcast. Great guys, great content. I definitely recommend you check them out if you like hockey nerdisms. They recently spent 3 episodes um scene by scene reviewing the Mighty Ducks movies. And if you go back and watch those movies, I will tell you right now, as an adult, you're gonna hate Charlie Conway. That guy's a
Yes.
snot-nosed brat. Charlie
Yeah.
Conway sucks.
Yeah, yeah, that's not a hot take actually. Like and that's coming from me, and it's a little bit tough for me to make that judgment because I actually missed the Mighty Ducks movies as a kid, so I only watched them at like 18.
Oh, what?
So I obviously agree with you just from the context of not having watched it as a kid. So yes, you're right.
Yeah, Charlie Conway sucks. Adam Banks is cool. The rest of the team's usually pretty cool. Also those movies are really dirty. I don't know if you noticed that. There is for movies starring kids made for kids, there's a lot of innuendo in those movies you don't expect and you're extremely caught off guard by. But yeah, I highly recommend you go and watch them. They have some of the guys from Almost Friday and the Friday Beers stuff, guest host, and they're great on there. But it was really funny. I started chatting with this dude outside, and I was like, "Hey, you really sound like the guy from one of the guys from the Empty Netters podcast." He's like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm here for Play On." And I was like, dude, no way. That's awesome. I had no idea because these guys are from the East Coast of the States and they live in California. So them coming up for play-on seems like such a cool thing. And yeah, I mean, that was early in the weekend. Managed to have myself an awesome weekend. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the last of my summer trips. Oh, actually, it's not. I'm going to the Gorge in Washington next Friday. I'm going to see Everything Always, which is John Summit and Dom Dolla's duo thing. And I don't know if you're familiar with the venue, the Gorge. It's it's pretty freaking sweet. I've never been, always been on the bucket list, but yeah, I mean, Aiden, do you feel like you got all of your summer fun in? Now that we're in September, we're kind of running shy on summertime. Do you feel like you could check it all off?
Honestly, dude, yes, and optimistically, like so much so that the other 2 years where I was facing coming back to Red Deer, I was so far from ready or happy to be in terms of coming after the summer was over. I was so okay with my summer that this was the first year I might have been like actually excited to come back. Like I was definitely ready to be productive again. I'll tell you that.
Well, and I will say for everyone who wants to have an awesome summer next summer, I myself will be spending a month in Europe next summer. I have no idea how the pod's gonna work. Maybe it'll just be random late night 30-minute episodes next summer. I don't know. But um, you know, if you want to look awesome next summer, get in the gym now. Your summer body starts now. Summer's over. You start building that summer bod right now. I know a lot of my buddies have had a few too many beers and steaks and burgers and hot dogs and whatnot over the course of this summer. We're not all looking as good as we did July 1st. That's for sure. So get in the gym now. Go get yourself ready. And yeah, grind starts
See,
now.
James, like I'm the opposite in terms of and it's just it's part of who I am and just like the personality personality and the mood problems I have per se. But um in the summer, I find myself way more healthy because I want to be outside the whole time. It's in
Yeah.
the winter that I'm like, my days are me curling up with a blanket in the office and drinking coffee and doing absolutely no physical exercise. That's kind of that's that's what kills me. So for me, it's like it's got to be. It's not. It's not the focus on making up for the summer. It's the focus on continuing actually being vaguely healthy.
And see, I fall somewhere in the middle, weirdly. I usually have all these intentions of looking great for summer, but I usually look my best about midwinter. Like February, I am beach ready, locked and loaded, ready to go. I don't know how or why. And then spring, I completely fall off the wagon. I go straight comfort mood all through, all comfort food and comfort mood all through like March, April, May. And then June comes around and I go, oh God, what am I gonna do? But I'm not allowed to this year because I'm going to Coachella again next year. So I have to look great for that, and I have to look great for Europe. So, um, yeah, it's a non-stop, never-ending job. to look even average. So, but yeah, I mean, that's enough about us. Let's get into some hockey. It's time. Aiden, how about we start with a record-setting amount of money being handed out? How about we kick things off there?
Yeah, and we knew this was coming, right? Like I definitely I definitely don't think Stan Bowman was gonna let this fester for too long. Leon Draisaitl inks $14 million a year for the next 8 years. And you know what, James, like in terms of just earning it, obviously this guy's earned it. And like you look at his last contract, he was making 8.5 million bucks, which didn't look like an overpay at the time. It was kind of the first of those like right out of the first or the second contract, give a guy long term at a higher number than he probably has earned, but you're banking on him, growing into that and improving into it. And Draisaitl like so far surpassed that expectation, right? He was making $8.5 million to be, I truly think for the majority of that contract, he was the second best player in the world. And I don't really think, like in this amount of time, say for 1 year of Austin Matthews, I don't think anybody's come close to him and McDavid. Um,
Nathan McKinnon, sorry.
Nathan McKinnon too, yeah, and you can make a Kucherov case.
Yeah, and Kucherov, Kale McCarr. I think
Um,
the top five aside from one is usually a wash.
Yeah. Oh, and it's been that tier of player, right? I've long since said that I think Cale Makar, in terms of like value, is the second best player in the world because of the fact that he's a defenseman, right? Like there's no other defenseman like that. But Draisaitl's just been so productive, right? He's been a machine, and the fact that he's been a machine, like like how many guys we could sit here for hours talking about guys where superstars in the regular season that just didn't click in the playoffs, and that's never happened to Draisaitl. I think that's the most impressive part, is that it's the sheer consistency, and the consistency as he's been battling. Like don't forget, you remember that playoff series, man, where he was basically on one foot against the LA Kings. Like I've never really seen
But he
somebody.
might have been even better.
Yeah, I've never seen somebody dominate from such a stationary position all the time. Like it was a case study in how to excel as an NHLer if you aren't a strong skater, right? Like it's
I don't care who studies that and how long they study it, they won't be able to do it.
no. Well, and in terms of like if you are a younger guy, it's not going to happen, but somebody like a Sidney Crosby, right? Where Sidney Crosby was one of the smartest players in the NHL for his entire career. If his legs start to slow down, that's where you're going to see
Right, right.
that kind of domination happen, right? Like I don't think a young player will be able to excel like that. But when you've got, high hockey IQ guys that are just slowing down, that's a that's a pretty good way to stay an effective NHLer. But yeah, Draisaitl earns it, and Edmonton, to me, James, again, like I know we just saw a very rare thing in the NHL where the Stanley Cup losing finalist turned around and won it the next year. But the Oilers team, man, I think they're one defenseman away from being right there again.
So Draisaitl's contract, 112 million over 8 years. That adds up to 14 million per. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the thing that makes you wonder is, what are they going to pay Bouchard and McDavid? Aiden, I want a ballpark guess on average annual value for each of those guys.
Well, it was kind of reported last year, right? That I'm not quite sure I remember who reported it. Obviously, I'm way more in like the Edmonton sports market than James is, so I should know this. But there was a lot of talk during the playoffs last year that the projected contracts for these guys were going to be $40 million. That three players were going to add up to 40. Um,
Per, like
and
per year.
yeah, yeah. And so, I think you can kind of start to see the bones of that. So McDavid will get 16 or 17 AAV, and Bouchard will get 9 or 10, and it'll be a $40 million core three for Edmonton, which,
Dude, I've got Bouchard at 11.
yeah, well, and possibly, right? Like he's it's hard because at the end of the day, like he's going to he is and is going to continue to be this level of productive. And I do think that his two-way game gets a little bit inflated by the fact that Matthias Ekholm is so responsible defensively. Uh, so, if you're asking me objectively, what should he get? Evan Bouchard's not more than an $8.5 million guy to me, but I understand that, in this NHL, the power play points that he puts up with Draisaitl and McDavid is going to be seen as valuable enough to drive that number up.
Yeah, and then I mean, then my math brings it to McDavid at 15.
Yeah, well, and again, if it's that 40 number, and at the end of the day, like I'm totally a not just in hockey, but in my life, power to workers, right?
Yeah.
The higher wages you can make, the better. So I'm not advocating for Connor McDavid to take a pay cut because at the end of the day, he shouldn't have to take a pay cut. He should be able to make the amount of money that he's earned. And again, we'll have more extensive talks about how the salary cap is preventing that, but um, so I'm not saying he should take a pay cut, but don't you think he will a little bit? Like, don't you think there's a chance he just takes Draisaitl's contract?
It would be really cool if he did. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that much of a pay cut if you really think about it in the grand scheme of things. So, I mean, it would be really cool if he did, but also, I don't know. All these guys are competitive. Remember when McKinnon signed his deal and it was like very, very notably like 100K a year per more than the next guy? Like, he signed that just more than McDavid. Just more. Okay, I was the highest paid player in the league for a year. Done. So I think like what what if McDavid's 14-1?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, that would also be a pay cut.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. I mean, I think that's enough on those guys though. There are a lot more contracts and non-contracts actually to get to. So Seth Jarvis, he was an RFA throughout the course of this summer. He has signed an 8-year extension with a yearly average of $7.42 million, but the total is 63.2. So you may be wondering, why doesn't that math check out? That doesn't make sense. Well, this is where it gets interesting. There is deferred money on that contract. Aiden, do you understand the deferred money? Because I don't.
Oh, great. Because, well, short answer, no, I guess. This was something that, you kind of you used to see before the 2012-2013 CBA where teams would like backload a lot of the contracts. Um,
Oh, Kovalchuk.
yeah, Kovalchuk Luongos was like that too.
Yeah.
Um, Now again, I should have prepared a little bit better for this one. So I don't know exactly what the benefit to doing that now is. But Carolina gets this $7.42 million guy, James. And am I'm not wrong to say that this is going to be like an absolute bargain of a contract, right?
I think so. I
Yeah.
I certainly think so.
Yeah, like Seth Jarvis is a rock star. Like we're talking if this guy was 6'2" instead of 5'10", we'd be talking like Team Canada lock, right?
Yeah.
He is such a talented hockey player, and you know sophomore slump I think is in isolation, right? Because he bounced back hard in that year three, and man, this Carolina team has done well to bring somebody like that up amidst being competitive and have this young gem that, much like the Dallas Stars with Jason Robertson and Wyatt Johnston, right? Like Carolina being able to transition from the Taivo Teravainen and the Jordan Stahl led team into the Aho and now into the Jarvis.
So, Aiden, what I am reading now, how this works is he's got just over 29 million in signing bonuses, but what they've done is the payment of the bonuses from year 1, 2, and 7, which are 8.9 million, 4.9 million, and 5.7 million. Those aren't going to be made until July 1st, 2032. So on July 1st, 2032, Seth Jarvis is going to wake up with a lot of M's in his bank account, like a lot, just a ridiculous amount. And the reason for that is apparently, according to Forbes, who has done all of the work for me here, and Puckpedia, the dollar today is worth more than that dollar is tomorrow. So basically, these bonuses are discounted to their present values for salary cap purposes. and that drops the total cap charge by about $4 million. So if that doesn't make sense to you, whatever, we can move on. The important part is Seth Jarvis signed, and he is going to make a ton of money, especially on that one day in 2032. Moving on from those guys, moving on from that contract though, there are a lot of RFAs still not signed, Aiden. And I was really hoping that here on Sunday, September 8th, when we were recording, one of these guys, maybe just two more, would be signed. We've got Cole Perfetti, Dawson Mercer, Jeremy Swayman, Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, Peyton Krebs, and Thomas Harley, all still waiting for contracts. I think that's all. I could be missing one. I actually was missing Thomas Harley. That was one I didn't have written down, but I remembered that as I was saying them. And I mean, that's a lot of money still to be doled out. You start thinking about the Bruins without Jeremy Swayman now that they've traded Linus Allmark. What if Swayman's holding out for a month? What does that do? That's not pretty, man. I mean, like I think the Jets can get by a couple weeks without Cole Perfetti. I think the Devils can get by a couple weeks without Dawson Mercer. I think the Red Wings are going to go 0-10 in 10 games without Raymond and Sider.
For sure. Yeah,
I think the
that's not
Sabres can do without Peyton Krebs, but I mean, they'll probably just sign him when training camp fully gets underway if they haven't agreed to something because they have cap space. And it's projected that Krebs will get somewhere between 1.8 and 2.5 million for a year. So I don't really see that one being an issue at all. I
No,
mean,
Buffalo's got space, man. And you know what?
right.
Like it's not so much that I think the Sabres are making a mistake by having it, but it's just so weird to see a team that, at this point, I can't imagine Buffalo's anything but all in to make these playoffs this year. And for a team that, it's kind of success or bust to have over 9 million bucks of cap space at this point in the offseason, it's a little bit surprising. Um, and it's not like they're saving it. You look at the other strong teams with this much cap space, they're saving it for these other RFAs. The Boston one's interesting, man, because Jeremy Swayman, again, we've seen reports that he wants 10.5 million bucks. Boston have $8.5 million in cap space. Like this is the math isn't mathing. Something's got to give. Now they have 1,000,003
Aiden, I
of.
will just interject real quickly here. In listening to these empty netters guys a little more closely after I met him, they know him, and according to them, he is not asking for that, and they said they will say no more.
Okay, interesting. Well, and you know what? It's $8.5 million right now for Boston, and Mike Riley's buyout comes off the books after this season, so they could afford they can't afford to pay him, just shy of 10 with the Riley buyout gone. It's just they would need to find a way to just shed a couple million bucks just for this year, and then they'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, in terms of all these RFAs, who do you think signs next? What do you think they're going to get?
I think Lucas Raymond and Mo Sider are gonna end up with identical like 8x9s, eight
Eight
by
by
eight
nines. I
five.
like it.
I think 8x9s. Lucas Raymond, man, like I know that might sound like a lot for him. Um, much like if you don't, if you're doubting Seth Jarvis, I implore you to watch some of this guy last year because I was doubting this guy, James, because it wasn't necessarily that like the talent was so obvious in the first two seasons, but he I wasn't sure that he was going to be able to round out his entire game, both his entire offensive game, but even just the two-way game. And he's a winger. He doesn't need to be a Selke candidate, but he needs to be good enough, and he wasn't,
Mm.
right? But last year, man, this guy took over games. He took over shifts. He did a way better job even of just the simple just being aware enough. He has his stick active in defensive transition when he's back checking, and it's everything he does is deliberate, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of Patrick Laine. He doesn't have the big shot like Laine, but when Laine was young, the swagger and confidence that Raymond was playing with last year was the same that Laine had when he was in Winnipeg at the beginning. And man, this guy could be dangerous. And Mo Sider is going to be a guy that's just going to be perennially in that top 5, top 10 defenseman in the league range for, you know, a long time.
I agree with everything you just said, but I think Thomas Harley's signing next. I don't think the Stars can go this season without Thomas Harley. I think he's damn near as important to that team as any other player right now. Over the last year, he's gotten so much better. Like he is a very, very good number three. I think some teams would have him as a number one or two.
Yeah, and it's funny because and I sort of get it, but James, this Dallas defense, do you know how much money they're paying Matthew Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin to play for them for the next 2 seasons combined? 7 million bucks, man. What? They have $4.5 million in cap space and they're paying those two guys 7 million bucks. So, that's what I'm running up against with Harley, where Dallas, like, you're right that this guy's a $7 million player for sure right now on the low end. And the Stars, like, it just seems like they haven't remotely prepared for this, needing to pay this guy. Like and it's almost like they've oversaturated their defense a little bit. It's odd, man. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but a lot of teams do this, and this isn't the first time, and it certainly won't be the last time we see that kind of thing happen. But I mean, I guess to button up this topic, I really hope all of these guys just sign because I'm excited about every single one of these players for different reasons this season. Like Cole Perfetti has the chance to be a massive impact player on that Jets team. Massive. Dawson Mercer could line up perfectly with any one of New Jersey's dynamic forwards. Imagine him and Timo Meyer just turn into an extra dynamic duo. Like that could work. That could work incredibly. Jeremy Swayman, I mean, he's poised to start like probably 65 games. And I've always said he's better than Allmark. Always have. I mean, sometimes I'm in the minority there, sometimes I'm in the majority. And now he's given this whole season to shine with a Bruins team that I will say is loaded. And I mean, maybe has one more kick at the can with Brad Marchand, which we'll talk about later. Sider and Raymond, they are that team. I love Patrick Kane, massive Kaner fan. I love a lot of their other pieces. Dylan Larkin's a mutant, but this team's not running without them. Peyton Krebs is a guy who I hoped was going to take a big step forward and be a middle six guy who's consistent and continues to develop his two-way game, maybe get some action on the second power play. Like I think he's a good kind of impact player that you can have as like a utility guy, a gun for hire type beat. And I thought this was the kind of year where he's really going to flourish, where they're playing important games down the stretch and he's a big part of it. But I mean, and then Thomas Harley for reasons I've already explained. But I don't know, man. Do you think any of these are going to end up holding out until deep into the year?
Yeah, I don't know because it's really it's as much as anything the money, right? And I have a feeling that it's Thomas Harley, man. Like I know you said you think he's the next to sign. I think he knows his value, right? He was at times better than Heiskanen last year. He was at times their best defenseman. So
He's an $8 million D man, no question about it.
yeah. So for Dallas to need to clear at least one player on a defense core that's already way overpaid is a tough sell.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, enough about these RFAs. Let's move on and talk about a couple guys retiring. Mark Stahl, a guy I loved talking about, a guy I loved watching, and a guy I really liked adding in my franchise modes growing up. Yeah, he's calling it quits. So is Alex Goligoski. Um, I think any notes about these guys I have just include them being really steady Eddie kinds of players, dependable defensemen kind of guys you have as number three, number four. Never really a top pair guy, but I mean, great careers. Both of them played over 1,000 games, if I'm correct on that one. Yeah, I mean, congrats on great careers to them. I would have liked to see them be able to win more in terms of team hardware. Getting to see, I mean, a couple more Stanley Cups would be sweet, but great careers nonetheless. And yeah, Aiden, I believe you have one mark down that's a little bit of a shorter career. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, well, and just quickly on Stahl and Goligoski, man, like these are two guys where I think how good they were is kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit in terms
True.
of yeah, in terms of great and how good the defense position was in the early 2010s. Um, Goligoski had a year or two there where he was a very, very good two-way defenseman. He was an amazing play killer in transition. He never really got beat in the defensive zone, and his passing and his offensive ability
Hmm.
was everything was clicking for him. Mark Stahl too was just like he kind of defined the tough defensive defenseman for a while there, and yeah, these two guys much I'll guess we'll say a much more positively memorable career than Alex Formanton, who called it quits on his hockey career, man. And it's the first of these 2017 World Junior guys that have had their careers end and I'm glad we're here, James. And
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for, for at the end of the day, like the entire even idea of the way we as a society even just like deal with people who have committed criminal actions. The entire system is fundamentally based on rehabilitation, right? So I'm totally an advocate for that. So I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit here and say this guy made a mistake, so he deserves his life to be over. But at the same time, James, I don't know if I was hopeful at the start of this season we were going to have this much progress made on this case. And at the end of the day, I want this to be over. I want the victim to have peace, and I want the people involved to not have the opportunity to do that, right? To ever negatively affect somebody's life the way they did. So yeah, I wanted to talk about how happy I am, not with the fact that, one of these players necessarily has their career end, but I'm happy with the progress that this situation has made. And it was one of the things that I know we talked about at the start of last season as like a as a hopeful for this year. And uh, I'm happy with it with where we are, and I just hope that more resolution and more peace is on the way.
Definitely, man. And I'm really happy you're able to tackle that one because I was having a little bit of trouble getting my thoughts together on that topic, and I feel like you kind of conveyed all the information perfectly. And I think I saw reports that he's working in construction now, and you know what? There's a lot of good guys working in construction, and maybe they'll help build some character. Not sure if that's something necessarily he's lacking, but maybe if it is, that's it's a good place to start. So, I mean, all the best to everyone involved going forward. And as you said, resolution is a good thing to reach. But Aiden, on a lighter note, when was the last time before this week that you heard the name Nikolai Kulemin?
That's a good question. I definitely could not tell you. I think like it would have to have been yeah, like we're talking it would have to have been 5 years ago maybe, and here we are.
Well, Nikolai Kulemin was a NHL player through the late 2000s and through the 2010s. He started his career. I'm surprised this wasn't a career trajectory at some point that we've done. I'm really surprised this name hasn't come up. But yeah, he played for the Maple Leafs for 6 seasons. He had one pretty damn good season. His third year with the team. 30 goals, 57 points in 82 games. It was a 10-11 year. Then he played a little bit with the Islanders. He did three full seasons and one very short one with them. Left the NHL after the 17-18 season. And he played in the KHL for 6 years. And you know what? I honestly thought this was probably going to be the last we saw of Nikolai Kulemin in North America. I mean, he's 38 years old. So what now? Why are we bringing him up? Well, Nikolai Kulemin has signed a professional tryout contract with the Ottawa Senators. Is that not hilarious that we're going to see Nikolai Kulemin in most likely the first preseason game of the year is against the Leafs? Nikolai Kulemin has a 16-year-old kid playing hockey in Toronto.
It's
What are the
cool.
odds that he doesn't think he's going to make the team, but he just wants to play one more game in front of his kid?
It's cool. I mean, it's cool and it's interesting. We've seen PTOs go to guys that, like kind of everybody would have assumed their career's over. I can't
Yeah.
remember somebody getting a PTO like after this long an absence, right? Like usually it's
Well, he
it's
left the
either
NHL kind of early. Like
yeah,
he was only 32 when he left the league.
yeah.
31 actually.
Yeah, it's an oddball. Maybe the Sens know something, right? His KHL numbers are good. We'll see obviously if this is something they go forward with.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of PTOs flying around. Like Steven Lorentz signed one with the Leafs. The Devils signed Jakub Zboril and goaltender Michael Hutchinson to PTOs. Kalen Addison has a PTO coming up with the Sens. Like I would have thought a couple years ago he would have a normal contract. Bruins signed Tyler Johnson to a PTO. Canucks signed Sammy Blaze. There's a handful of other ones that I haven't seen recently, but I mean, when there's a PTO, I usually cheer for the guy to make the team. He's going through training camp. He doesn't have a locked in spot, and he's playing in preseason games, and it's game by game. They're hoping that they see something from this guy, and if there's maybe a game and a half that they don't, he's done. It's over. He won't have a spot in the NHL this season, barring some random couple months down the line miracle where a team is really short a couple guys because of injuries and they're like, oh, we really need this depth at the wing. Oh, we really need this depth defenseman. He has some experience, a little bit of talent left in the tank, a little bit of gas. He can get there. He could fill in a spot for us. What they're looking for in Nikolai Kulemin, I don't know, but I love it. This is a one-time 30-goal scorer. This is at one time, I believe he may have been okay. Yeah, at one time, he was probably the third best player on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is that crazy to say? I don't know. Either way, I want to see him playing in the league this year. I do know for a fact I will be watching that preseason game just so I can say I watched Nikolai Kulemin one more time. Some of our younger listeners, Aiden, maybe a couple of your buddies who are younger than you, I don't think they care who Nikolai Kulemin is.
No, man, no way.
But me, that's hilarious.
This
So,
was this was an Olympian, man.
yeah.
Don't sell Nikolai Kulemin short. Russian Olympian. Yeah,
And
we'll see, man. Like
anyone
I
watched hockey in the early 2010s, especially you and all your Leafs hater cronies? Yes, I just referred to you guys, Aiden's friends, as Leafs hater cronies, because sometimes that's what you are.
you should have seen the place when Pasternak scored this year, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Just
I've
this.
never seen people rely that much on humorous hatred, and I love the passion. I don't fit in with it. I don't fully get it from your guys' standpoint, but I love the passion. Like it's cool to be stoked about stuff. So like all power to you. But hey, put some respect on Nikolai Kulemin's name. Like let's I hope he gets an NHL job. And how funny would it be if he scores like he makes the team, scores a GWG against the Leafs? You guys would live for that. Or at least I hope you would. And if you don't, do some research.
Well, and unfortunately, like the promise of that being in a significant game is not there yet. Obviously, he's got to make the team. Um, Another Ottawa winger though. I'm a little bit surprised Dominic Kubalik didn't continue, James. Like
Aiden, he was sick in Chicago. That what else has happened since then?
he had a solid year or two in Detroit, didn't he? He had at least one good year in Detroit where he potted 20 goals, 50 points or something. Like
Aiden,
it,
there was one point where his autographed Future Watch rookie card, which I needed to collect for my set, was worth $120. Yeah, yeah, actually, he scored 20 goals in Detroit. That's not bad.
yeah, so I'm a little bit surprised that one bad year in Ottawa and this guy didn't want to stay. Like 29 years old, he still had another contract in him. I totally
Yeah.
think a team that needs, I like middle six guys who can play a role and who can play up and down the lineup. And Dominic Kubalik, I think with the right coaching and the right fit, could have been that guy. I don't know if his two-way game is rounded out enough to play a bottom six role, but he's 6'2", 200 pounds. He can throw his weight around too, right? So it was an odd one. I'm much less surprised to see Philip Zadina go. I'll tell you that while we're on the topic of Czech wingers who depart.
Man, I really wish what he said when he was drafted came true and he did fill the net with goals because his name was Phil Ipzadina and he was going to fill the net with goals.
Well, and you know what sucks is I kind of thought last year in San Jose was, it wasn't quite what he needed it to be, obviously, because he didn't get another contract. But
It was
when
progress.
yeah, when I saw him go to the Sharks, I was thinking, all right, so now he's gonna get a bona fide, consistent middle six, maybe top six role, and he'll have the opportunity to play on the power play, maybe score some goals and earn another contract. And uh, I don't think it was the best case scenario, but he still scored like 15 goals last year, and he still had 25 points or something. Like, so I'm surprised that nobody else took a chance on them. But yeah, James, you're right. Um, what I will
Wait, Aiden,
say,
Aiden, hold on, hold on. We don't know that no one took a chance on him. There could have been offers in places where he didn't really like his chances of mm, being in a position to make an impact and being in a position to grow further. Maybe there were spots where guys are like, okay, we're going to play in the AHL. And he thought, okay, I need to go play in a spot where I'm going to be the guy, get some confidence back. And then in 1 or 2 years, I'm going to come back to the NHL.
well, I could totally see this guy just having like a crazy world championships, right? Like, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, an NHL team wants to take a sniff on a PTO, right? Like, so yeah, this might not be the end for Zadina. I think it is the end for Kubalik at his age.
I mean, don't say that. Nikolai Kulemin's coming back at
Yeah,
38.
yeah, that's
And
you want to.
Zadina's not almost 30. He turned 29 like or sorry, uh Kubalik isn't almost 30. He turned 29 like a couple weeks ago.
San Jose
And
will
I
be
don't just know his birthday off the top of my head. I only know that from a Google search. I'm not that crazy.
San Jose is going to be odd, hey. It's going to be an interesting year there, and I totally think that they are going to do very well to have at least two more years of not very good teams. But you want to talk about
Aiden,
some
I'm
cool
so glad
stuff.
you segued that to
Yeah.
San Jose
Yeah.
stuff. You did it so cleanly, and I just had to ruin it because I'm so excited about this. All right, so it comes out like a week ago. Macklin Celebrini, first overall draft pick, the migrated Bay Area boy. As Jordan Schmaltz has called him, Macklin Felabrini. Um, he will be living with Joe Thornton, perhaps like the coolest NHL player from my lifetime. He'll
Never
be
forget.
living with Jumbo Joe.
No, yo, you gotta do not forget how funny that lawnmower photo was. You know what I'm talking about? Like, he signed a 1 year contract, I think, with Florida, and his announcement on social media was to post him sitting on his drivable lawnmower in his yard, signing the contract. That was very funny. He was a hilarious dude, and him and Brent Burns did so much fun stuff together in San Jose. Yeah, it's and I love his character, man. I do. Joe Thornton, to me, if if you asked me to make a list of like late 2000s, early 2010s hockey players that I want Macklin Celebrini to learn from and learn how to be a pro from, Joe Thornton's near the top of the list, man. This is close to best
He
case
might be the
scenario.
top.
Yeah, like I'm kind of thinking, maybe Jonathan Taves, right? Just because Celebrini and Taves to me are like this is like what when I don't know if it ever happens on NHL, but it happens on FIFA. I don't know on these EA games where when you play like a franchise or a career mode forward, you get players that are just like regenerated retirees. It's just how the game
Oh,
works.
I think that happened in old NHL games. I don't think it
Y-
happens anymore.
Yeah. Macklin Celebrini feels like a Jonathan Taves regen, man. Like just the
Mm.
way this guy plays, the the two-way ability he has, the IQ, everything. So Taves was my first thought, but after him, yeah, like Joe Thornton and there's more because you want to talk about Will Smith because
Okay, okay. Before I get there, there's one thing that I have in my head, and you know how like you could apparently never get Joe Thornton out of the dressing room, never get him out of the rink. Like on an off day, he's going to the dressing room, going to the rink just to hang out. He's gonna go shoot it around with the trainers. He's gonna kick a soccer ball around. He's gonna get some stretching done. He's gonna get on the massage table. He might go for a little skate. Might even just put his gear on and then take it off. Like, might just have a meal at the rink. He just wants to be there. He wants to eat, sleep, and breathe hockey at every moment of his life. What do you think is going to happen every time Celebrini has to go in for practice? Thorne's going to be like, I'm coming with you. Yep. Yeah, I'm going to come with you. I'm just going to come hang out. And then Mac's just going to be like, hey, you think today, like, I could just go solo? He's, no, no. I am relishing and soaking up every moment of this. There won't be a single time that Celebrini goes to the rink in San Jose without him. Thornton's probably going to be bored when Celebrini's on road trips. So, yes, Aiden, as you were saying, Will Smith will be taking note from Celebrini, and he's living with fellow Sharks legend Patrick Marleau. Marleau and Thornton are boys. Don't you think they're just going to be having barbecues like every week, the four of them? And then Marlowe and Thornton are just telling stories about having to go up against the Wings in playoffs
Okay,
and
and
all these crazy things.
here's the hypothetical picture I'm going to paint to you as well, James. You've got Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini around Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau, and is this not the situation that you expect to hear Smith and Celebrini talk about when they've won the Stanley Cup together in 2029?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that's what strikes me. And man, like, and we can talk about the situation they're in San Jose, which from every indication seems like the organization is doing everything they can to set them up for success, which is obviously what you should be doing. But this last draft, James, this could be a franchise defining draft for San Jose because not only did they get the best player, they might have got um the player to me that's destined to be the most consistently reliable defenseman in this draft, and that's Sam Dickinson.
Yep.
They got him at 11th. Then they got Chernyshov and Salim Wallenius in the second round. Chernyshov is a high ceiling Russian winger, and that Swedish defenseman Salim Wallenius, again, the ceiling looks high. He looks incredibly offensively talented. He's never played higher than the Swedish Junior League, which is basically the third best league in Sweden. So it's hard to judge, right? The level of competition isn't as good as some of the other guys that obviously, we're comparing them to. But man, the Sharks are building something good, James. And it happens on the ice with these players, but it's happening off the ice as well.
So, all right, I want to paint even further of a picture. Yaroslav Askarov is coming in, laden with a freaking neck tattoo. And they have Shakir Mukhamadullin, Tommy Bordalo, Sam Dickinson. I really like Quentin Musty, even though he's totally boomer bust. Like he is fully boomer bust. And you have whoever they're going to add this year. And don't doubt that they're going to acquire another sick prospect or sick like reclamation project this year.
Dude,
There's going to
remember,
be a
hey,
player on a team that is struggling, a young guy who's just going to go to San Jose and start being awesome this year.
we've
Mark my
been
word.
we've been talking about San Jose for 10 minutes and I haven't said the name Philip Beasted yet.
Yeah.
That's a good centerman, man. He scored 7 points in 8 games in the AHL after he came over at the end of last season. Like he's gonna make the night one roster. And like, yeah.
Aiden, what about the name Casper Haltonen?
Another solid prospect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Quentin Musty was a guy I had a lot of good things to say about during the draft last year. Yeah, this is there's a lot of guys in this organization, and not to mention the players that are already playing, right? Like William Eklund to me, like last year, rookie season, 80 games, 16 goals, 45 points. That's exactly what I expected out of this guy. There's no reason to doubt him either.
100%. Well, they also have a couple younger, I mean, young-ish guys in Lucas Carlson. I mean, he's 27 now, but I think he has a chance to make an impact with this team. He was a fourth rounder by the Hawks back in the day, but I always kind of felt like he had a little bit more to give. It never really worked out in the NHL. Same deal with winger Martin Kaut. He was a Colorado draft pick. Never really worked out there. Kind of struggled in the AHL a bit, but hey, I mean, there's ice time to be taken up in San Jose. Get out there, give it your best, and I would love to see some guys surprise us this year. I guarantee for fantasy hockey players in deeper leagues, you are going to see some San Jose Sharks player you are not expecting be very freaking good. You're not going to expect it. It's going to catch you completely off guard. And everyone is going to be scrambling to get whoever this guy is. And then as soon as you get him, it's going to go south because this is a very inexperienced team and this player's production will probably fall off for a couple weeks. But that's just how it is. That's the fun of watching a team rebuild. It's great being a fan of an awesome team, but I have a couple friends who are Penguins fans, and for them, they get to watch the assembly of prospects over the next few years and the tear down over the next few years. And I love that stuff from my years of playing franchise mode. So watch, have fun, and I hope more people become Sharks fans because this is getting cool to watch.
Yeah, they're coming, man. Like this looks real, and they've got their crowning piece now, right? They've got their guy, and
Hey, props to Mike Greer, I mean, youngish, newish GM for putting together some good pieces and doing some good work. As rebuilds go, the rebuild GM is not usually the one that's around when the team starts doing well. Unfortunately, he'll end up having to probably get relieved of his duties and pass the torch to someone else, but his handprints will be all over that team and someone else will take him on and he'll go win a cup there. So keep doing good work. We love to see it. Now, something we don't love to see. Aiden. Thatcher Demko not going to be ready for camp, according to reports. What the hell's going on?
it's a great question because this is incredibly bizarre, right? Like the entire thing's incredibly bizarre. Where we heard at the end of the season, start of the playoffs last year, that it's a nagging lower body injury, but it shouldn't be a problem. He
This
should
was
be,
before playoffs, even.
yeah, he'll be fine, right? And then when
Yeah, Rick Tocchet is quoted as saying he's not too worried about it.
yeah, um, there's two things that I have in mind with this, okay?
Wait, Aiden, before we go to your thoughts, we
Yeah.
need to go through the rest of the timeline here because um, uh, aggravated injury during round one, taken out of the net. During round two, it's all smoke and mirrors going, okay, he could be ready any game now. Okay, he won't be ready until the end of the round, maybe game seven. Okay, he's not going to be ready for game seven. Then Demko comes out and says, after they're eliminated by the Oilers in that game seven, that I would have been ready for round three. Then you hear radio silence all summer. And then now we get this report that he won't be ready for camp. Maybe not the start of the season. And it still feels like smoke and mirrors. What the hell is going on?
Well, I believe we saw an Elliot Friedman report that whatever this is just like it's this isn't like a surgery fix. This
He
is
may have
either
to learn to play with it.
yeah, that or it's just gotta go away on its own. Like it's which that's not what you like to hear. And there's two things that come to mind here in Vancouver. All right. First off, Vancouver goalie coach Ian Clark is considered one of the best goaltending coaches in the league. But Vancouver made a weird decision that they were just gonna make him a goaltending scout. Ian Clark puts his goalies through a very hard training regimen, and I wonder if that is part of the reason we're seeing a Demko injury right now. I don't think it's a coincidence that at the end of the summer, Ian Clark was taken off the goaltending coaching duties in Vancouver. Um,
Is this a wild theory or is this pretty common?
I'm not sure, honestly. I probably would have to have my ear to the ground in Vancouver a little bit more, honestly, to know for sure. The other thing that's in my head, this feels a lot more far-fetched. I'm starting to wonder about the doctors, man. Like, do you not
Mm.
remember the Tanner Pearson situation where
Yeah.
his wrist problem was just mishandled and it took so much longer this injury and rehabilitation for Pearson. And like I have no idea why this would be happening. I hope it's not the case for the sake of obviously the players that are, somebody like Pearson, somebody now like Demko who are having their careers significantly impacted by injuries. Yeah. I don't know, James. I do, in the small little bit of optimism that's I'll try and sneak in here. I like I like Shelovs, and I think if Vancouver maybe go out, take a look at like a Kevin Lankinen or something as the backup, which is what the rumors are right now, I'm not gonna complain about like having Shelovs as the backup option. Obviously, he's not Demko, and obviously Demko would be best case scenario. But a, as far as losing your world class starting goalie goes, I'm not. There are much worse players to be putting in the net than Shelovs at this point.
I'll race you to get him in fantasy draft.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Well, I
Good
only
idea.
need one goalie, so
Yeah, no,
you need how
I,
many? Three?
I literally just got a trade from I think Caleb as we're recording this. So,
Uh,
anyways,
well, Caleb may end up listening. Is his trade good or not?
let's
You want
see.
to flame him here?
Yeah, just completely. I feel like is he gonna not send
You
us
don't need to read
trades?
out the trade, but you
Yeah,
could flame him if you want to.
no, far from it.
It's a good deal.
No, far from a good deal.
Oh, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
Caleb,
well,
done better offers.
yeah, that's not great. I don't, yeah, and again, like I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit like wide-eyed naive in this fantasy hockey thing because fantasy hockey for me all my life was just you pick a team and they get points, and so I'm getting used to this very very in-depth. Uh,
For those of you who are listening, this is a very, very deep dynasty format where we have 12 keepers per year, 23-man rosters, IR slots. There's 15 GMs in this league. Like trading, you can off-season trade draft picks. Like it's as deep as it gets to the point where at times it seems like guys are doing it full time. Like I don't know if they're working. So, I mean, I've had it be a dominant part of my life, which is hilarious. But what is great and what Aiden and I have to look forward to, and the other members of our league as well, is at the end of the month here, we have our fantasy hockey league draft, where we have a big draft party. We order a bunch of pizzas, bunch of guys will bring drinks, and then we'll be here all day. We'll have intense music for like a lead up to draft picks. There's only like a 30 seconds to make your pick. And like it's absolutely ridiculous. You basically have like 10 grown men sitting here stressed out in front of laptops, drinking and eating and laughing. And you know what? I wouldn't trade that for the world. But yeah, I mean uh that's super far off on a tangent for what's going on with Thatcher Demko. I mean, bottom line is we're hoping for the best. This isn't a funny thing for us. We want this guy to be able to regain form, be able to be back on top of his game because when he is, he's a top five goalie in the NHL. I'm not gonna hop on the Canucks fan train where they say he's like number one or two. I'm sorry, he's not. He's top five.
He's not even the number one or two American guy right now, man.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's on the team. I don't know if he like it's a toss up really. I could see any one of Swayman, Hellebuck, Demko going 1, 2, 3 on that American squad. And that's not
And
even
any of those
including
guys could take it and run with it too.
well, and that's not even including Ottinger, right? And I do think Ottinger's on the outside looking in that group, but Ottinger also has the ability to just pop off this year and have an
Yeah,
unreal
he
season.
has the highest ceiling in my
Yeah.
eyes. So
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you know what? With the age Swayman is now, and yeah.
yeah. Going across the continent to another injury-riddled situation. And this comes up because I was actually trying to acquire Brad Marchand in my fantasy league, and then after looking into it a little further, I saw that he's had three surgeries this offseason. And Aiden, Brad Marchand is 36 years old. He will be turning 37 this year. Well, this season rather. And man, I mean, I'm starting to wonder if we're seeing the beginning of the end for a guy who's been elite, like absolutely elite for the better part of the last 15 years.
It's hard, man. Like and I struggle to find like the because I truly have no idea, right? Like I truly have no idea what we're gonna see from this guy. It would be
I don't know
sad.
the severity of these
Yeah,
surgeries.
yeah. Um, I would definitely include Brad Marchand, and Brad Marchand might actually be the guy for this. And it's a little bit of a, again, we don't know what this is going to be for this guy. Obviously, if there's a career inhibiting problem here, that would be pretty sad to see for, like you said, a guy who's been one of the best wingers in the league at least since like 2013. Like he was a kid when
Yeah,
he won the cup in 2011, but he really grew into it 2013, 14-ish. And you know what? I think Brad Marchand is the guy when I think of um guys who missed their best on best window. Like he had that sick 2016 World Cup of Hockey, but he missed the Olympics of the early 2010s because like he would have been that Crosby Marchand Bergeron line we saw in that World Cup of Hockey, man. Could you imagine if we had that at Olympics in 2018 and 2022 even? Like
oh,
that would have been awesome. And at the end of the day, for Brad Marchand, he retires with a Stanley Cup, retires with a Best on Best International trophy if these injuries nag at him and inhibit his playing career. But I really hope he's still got some gas in the tank. He's turned from like a pretty hated player, right, to somebody who I think is pretty respected around the league and around fans now, which is a complete 180 from the Brad Marchand of 6, 7 years ago.
totally, totally. I mean, I go back and forth throughout my hockey watching lifetime to how I feel about the guy, but as an adult, I've found that I love the entertainment value. I love watching the talent, the drive, the determination, and I love the entertainment value. Yes, he's done things that have made me laugh, cringe, get angry, smile, all of the above. But I hope he's okay. And, you know, last even including the last couple years where the Bruins have been a fairly dominant, sometimes historically dominant regular season team. I like this Bruins roster more than any of those rosters. So I think if they're going to do something, this is probably the last year. This is it for me with them. Their window is closing for me. Even though they have a ton of sick pieces, like Lindholm and other Lindholm, both locked up long term.
That
You got
defense
Elias and
man,
Hampus. You got Pasternak. You
yeah,
got Swayman coming up. You got I think Charlie McAvoy is elite. Like you have, I think Charlie Coyle makes a great middle six center. Zaka's sick. Like I think Mason Lowry looks great.
Oh man, I love their top five a
Yeah.
lot. Brandon Carlo is a great player. Hampus Lindholm is a great player. Charlie McAvoy is a great player. Mason Lowry is a great player, and they just signed Nikita Zadorov too. Like
Yep.
that's a very good top five on the back end.
Yeah. Who's number six?
Andrew Peak right now, but I kind of have a funny feeling that he's gonna
I'm
end
not
up.
mad at that.
No, I mean that's a great number six. My worry with
Yeah.
him is he's kind of the money that I think Boston will clear up to get to the Swayman number.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, their forwards look great. Goaltending will look great once Swayman sign. Defense looks great. I mean, one more deep playoff run for Boston would be pretty cool to see. They have some tough teams to go through.
Especially in that Atlantic, right?
That
Like,
Atlantic is a gauntlet of pain.
yeah.
Like whether you have to play Tampa, Toronto, Florida, an a motivated Buffalo, a motivated Ottawa, or a motivated Detroit.
Montreal's coming and they're coming
Montreal
fast.
could be
Yeah.
better than all of those
Yeah.
motivated teams.
Yeah. Um,
According to Elliot Friedman, Uri Slafkovsky looks like a horse right now. So that's frightening. Frightening that he looks better.
no,
And
Montreal, we're gonna have a we will have a Montreal San Jose Stanley Cup final. I know that
that would
sounds
be so cool.
I know that sounds bizarre to say with the states of these teams and everything.
2030,
But easily, man. Like,
2032 maybe.
yeah, this Montreal defense looks. And you know what's going to kill the Habs is if Caulfield and Hudson and some of these guys that Caulfield's got the long contract already. My worry is them fitting all these guys under the salary cap, right?
Yeah.
Some of these players have the potential to just have that. Like Caulfield could easily go 45 goals in a contract year, and all of a sudden he's priced himself out, right? Like,
Yep.
so the building blocks look like Montreal are coming. I almost worry a little bit that it's a little bit oversaturated, but I really think Kent Hughes has done a good job so far, right? Like he got Caden Gooley long term at a low number. Um, he's got Uri Slajkovsky, Nick Suzuki, and Cole Caulfield all at pretty reasonable numbers long term. Um, yeah, Boston, James, for me, I'll leave this. I think they're getting out of there. I think they're getting out of the Atlantic this year. I think that's your Eastern Conference finalist out of the Atlantic. I
Yeah.
think, I think other teams in the Atlantic have better forwards than they do, but I think their defense and goaltending, provided they get Swayman locked down, is better than Toronto and Florida by enough that even though I think Toronto and Florida have better forward groups than Boston, I think Boston's D and goaltending is going to take them above them.
Well, I was actually talking with our fellow GM from our fantasy league, Colton, who is a Lightning fan, and we had the thought that what if Tampa's defense falls off a cliff and Hedman and Armak's production gets hit by a truck this year, and suddenly Vasilevsky's getting hounded every game, and they are terrible. What if they're just terrible?
I don't think you can be terrible with Vasilevsky, Kucherov, Point, and Gensel and Sorelli. Like,
Yeah, and Hagel.
yeah, like I think those players are gonna have that team be good enough, but I totally don't think they're in that. I wouldn't even say, James, like if I think about cup contenders and then cup hopefuls, to me they're in like a third tier right now.
Yeah,
Like,
like they're most likely a playoff team.
yes, yeah,
But
that,
I'm not even willing to lock them in as a playoff team.
I agree with you.
Hmm. Man, we could do an entire like 2 hour episode on the Atlantic. It's ridiculous. I've actually been listening to other people's Atlantic previews and I hear how long it goes and I dread the idea of doing an Atlantic preview. I don't want to.
Kind of speaking of podcasts to start this year, I haven't listened to the first episode yet. I mean to. I like Kyle Bukauskas in theory for Elliot Friedman. What I would need to hear is I haven't really heard Bukauskas very much talk hockey, right? Like he's obviously like a reporter.
Rinkside reporter, yeah.
Yeah, but a rinkside reporter and somebody with the hockey knowledge that is filling the shoes of a Jeff Merrick are two different things. So I like the idea in theory. I am eager and excited to hopefully be satisfied with the Bukauskas, the the hockey knowledge that he's got, because at the end of the day, the jobs he's had haven't really brought that out. So yeah.
Well, Aiden, I've listened to about an hour of the 2.5 hour episode, and I enjoyed so far. I've always been a fan of Kyle Bukauskas. He is from Vancouver Island, actually. He's from Campbell River, BC. And I know a couple guys who know him, played hockey against him or with him or something of the like growing up. And they've always had nothing but great things to say about him. Apparently, they went to uh, in the conference finals in 2022, they went to see Colorado versus Edmonton in Edmonton. And they went to go say hi to Kyle, and he brought them to go meet the whole Hockey Night in Canada crew. And just a really solid guy from what I've heard. So, in terms of quality of person, it sounds like Elliot made a really good choice. Um, I look forward to listening further. I've had a couple podcasts I enjoy basically break up or have one of the hosts leave or be removed as of late, and it's weird because you feel like you get to know these guys. Like you feel like they're company that you're listening to all the time. So I hope I fall in love with it the same way. I truly love Jeff Merrick's work, and as Elliot said on this week's podcast with Kyle, he knows Jeff will land on his feet. So yeah, Aiden, I know you had a little bit to talk about Junior. What do you got there?
Yeah, I was again at the Rebels game last night. First game I was working their social media, and man, this kid that they picked in the first round of the U15 draft last year is named Beckett Hamilton, and ooh, we got a winger, man. We've got a we've got a dub winger, and obviously, like the WHL, we're gonna start seeing Gavin McKenna be a rock star in the same way that Connor Bedard was in a little bit here. But this Hamilton kid could score from anywhere, man. This guy's shot was unbelievable. He's still only 5'8", 150, 16 years old. But I really hope he makes this Rebels team because he's gonna be the real deal in terms of uh, uh, a young prospect for them.
Hmm.
Um, you want to talk about Beckett Seneke too, man. This
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah, so I know a lot of Ducks fans are super excited for him. I'm a big fan of Beckett Seneca already. Love what he brings to the table. Loves his philosophy on on development and getting better, his work ethic. I think he's going to be an incredible player in the NHL. Like incredible character. Anything you could really ask for in a pro at that age. He's out 6 to 8 weeks with a foot injury, so he will be missing training camp, development camp, all those things. I don't think he would have made the Ducks this year. I don't think that was ever in the plans. I think he was always going back to Oshawa. But I feel really bad for him because he has to miss out on the experience. Miss out on the experience of getting to go hang out around the team, be around the pros, see the atmosphere, see what kind of work ethic and drive some of these pros who aren't stars bring to the table. Like at that training camp, you're going to see a Cam Fowler. You're going to see an Alex Killorn. You're going to see a Radko Gudas. And then you're going to see young core guys who you're probably going to be around for the next 10 years and Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish, like Pavel Mintyukov. Like you're going to get to go meet John Gibson. It's such an interesting thing that I think would have been a massive benefit for him. And from what I've heard and read, it sounds like a lot of these young guys, when they're older, when they're in their 30s, sometimes when they retire and they go do interviews, they talk about that first camp. They talk about being around these pros and being in the room and just being enthralled. So I feel really sorry for him for having to miss it. But I think he's going to go back to Oshawa with a head full of steam. He's going to figure it out. It's a fracture in one of his feet. Nothing too crazy, but I myself have had some issues with foot injuries in the past that can be really annoying to figure out. And I hope it's not something that lingers and bothers him. So, all the best to Beckett Seneca this year. Hopefully, he tears it up and is ready in time for World Juniors. I think he should be. So, yeah, Aiden, that's all I have on Junior. And I mean, assuming all you have on Junior, you have any movies for this week?
No, man, I didn't get to any. It's kind of just been like traveling and then working last couple weeks here.
Fair game, fella. Fair game. Well, I have one for our listeners. I just watched Hitman, starring Glenn Powell and directed by Richard Linklater. I'm a massive fan of Richard Linklater because he has directed two of my favorite movies of all time, in Everybody Wants Some and Dazed and Confused. This movie's really funky. Like it's got a lot of funny spots. It's got a lot of times where the dialogue carries on really long. Like a conversation between two characters will go like 6 or 7 minutes at times. And you're like, whoa, it doesn't even really feel like they're talking about much. But that's where you gotta sit back, relax, have a snack, something to drink, like enjoy the pure comedy because the character dynamics, absolutely phenomenal. Like these characters really bounce off each other. It's really well written. It's on Netflix. It ended up on Netflix. You can easily hop on and watch it whenever. Highly recommend. I would say it's a quirky comedy in terms of genre. And again, we don't get many comedies, and most of them seem to go straight to streaming. So enjoy comedies for what they are and when you can. And yeah, I will come back to you guys with another movie next week. I think I got a couple more on my list that I plan on getting done. So, Aiden, do you have any questions for me? Any Q&A, any trivia?
Yeah, we're gonna talk fantasy hockey, James. I'm totally gonna put you on the spot here because
Okay.
um not only am I putting you on the spot, like you have to drop some names on me short notice, but I'm also putting you on the spot in that some of these questions I'm gonna ask you maybe if there are people in the fantasy hockey league listening might help them out a little bit. So I want three players that are going to have better than expected seasons, and I want three players that you think you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole this year.
So three booms, three busts.
Yeah.
All right.
But unexpected, right? Unexpected, like
Unexpected.
the yeah.
Hmm. I'm gonna go with busts first. Actually, I might even knock them off one by one. I might not even have an order to this, but keep track of me so I don't screw it up. Um, the last couple years in Montreal and elsewhere, Mike Matheson has been a very, very, very good fantasy hockey player. I don't think we're getting that. I don't think we're getting that at all. I think we are going to see, even if they don't perform, we're going to see Montreal shift focus to some of their younger guys. And I think that's the unexpected part. People probably think, oh, if they aren't doing well, they'll shift back to the guy who has been money on the power play, money in transition. But I think it's time they look to the future, and I don't think he's as good.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think there's any logical reason that he shouldn't have been traded this summer. Montreal should have moved him.
Um, I actually have a funky one. I think Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be sick again in fantasy this year. I think he's going to be really good because there's no expectation on anyone in that group. And I think he's just going to be able to form some creativity with a couple other players. Mackenzie Weegar is a great offensive defenseman for him to play with. Get a nice pass up the ice, useful in transition, great on the power play. I think him and Kadri will be good together. I think Sharon Govich is going to be good again. And then I really, really like the idea of Calgary losing games 7-3 and 6-3 and him having two power play points. I think it's going to be a nice rebound for Johnny Huberdeau. I think maybe not 100, not 90. I think you're going to see like 78 points out of him with a lot of power play. Any thoughts on that one? Because you're shaking your head.
where Jonathan Huberdeau had success in Florida, he's not going to have success in Calgary. Calgary do not transition the puck well offensively, man. They just don't. The defense does not do nearly as good a job as they did in Florida. Jonathan Huberdeau loved to munch assists off the rush because he had a proficiency to always be able to find the trailer at the perfect time. So sometimes it was he bought time and he found the trailer late, which was a defenseman jumping up. Sometimes it was that player who then made another pass, which was scored. Huberdeau would get a second assist, or that player, the trailer, would themselves score the goal. Calgary doesn't do that well at all. So like Jonathan Huberdeau to me, without that ace transition game, is a 60-point guy. And it was with that transition game that he became the 100-point player. What I will say about Jonathan Huberdeau, and this is assuming that Calgary want to dump him, right? Because
They can't. It's not possible.
okay, I think Jonathan Huberdeau is a 100-point player with Connor Bedard. That's all I'm going to put out there. And I think if Calgary is willing to give up enough to get Chicago to take Huberdeau, Chicago should look into it because I think Huberdeau and Bedard would be like absolutely unbelievable together. Jonathan Huberdeau would get 80
Huberto plus
assists.
asset for Seth Jones.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't hate that at all if I was.
Oh.
And you get maybe some insulation for Zane Parekh if you're Calgary, right?
Mhm,
Veteran that, basically if Seth Jones is on the team, Parekh can be anything he wants when he's ready to be that and
mhm.
doesn't have to be before, right? That makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah. Um,
Another one in deeper formats, expected ton of fantasy value from Evan Rodriguez. He consistently has more and more trust in Florida. In Colorado, he filled in high in the lineup. Like this guy is a water bug, super talented. In an 82 game season, which he will likely not play, he will probably put up 60 points. High 50s, maybe. High 50s more likely. Probably 57. I'll give him that. And he'll chip in on the second power play. He'll get random game winners. Like you've seen him, like he could randomly get a hat trick. He's been known to get randomly 3 assists in a game. And it catches you off guard because he doesn't really do much all the time. He's consistently doing at least a little bit. And then there's some games where he just explodes. But he's a very trustworthy player in deeper fantasy formats. Highly recommend Evan Rodriguez. And not just that, I'm a fan too, so I'm biased.
yeah.
Um, all right. I have a bust for you. I have a weird one, and you're going to shake your head at me with this one. I am projecting a worse fantasy season for Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin is consistently around a point per game, consistently an impact player. And I just have this weird feeling it's going to be different this year. I don't have a lot of information to back it up, but I have an odd feeling that a very, very good impact line is going to be put together in Detroit without him on it. I think either Patrick Kane or Lucas Raymond or both are going to drive the offense with JT Compher.
Yeah, I like
I
that
think,
as a line.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and if that's a line, and I have always thought that Alex DeBrincat at the top of his game is an elite, like should be 40 goal scoring, great
Hmm.
winger. Man, Alex DeBrincat when he's not is barely a third liner to me.
And I think Tarasenko is not going to have it this year.
So you have those two guys playing with Larkin and so again, it's what version of Alex DeBrincat shows up to me. That's
Yeah.
that that's the one because it could be the elite 50 goal potential, like every shot he takes is just perfectly placed, or it could be I don't see him take a hard stride in 20 minutes of ice time, right? Like it's it could be either.
Yeah. I mean, it's the kind of thing where in a regular fantasy league where it's not a keeper format, Dylan Larkin is probably going in the third or fourth round. He's a very, very high impact player. Like he is filling all the categories of fantasy for you. I just have a feeling he's not relied on as much. Yeah, he'll still get in on the power play, but Aiden, one other thing. The guy gets injured pretty often, or at least it feels like it. Like, I don't know if you can tell me how often Dylan Larkin's been injured this, like in the past few years, but it feels like I'm often waiting for him to come back. All right, so this last season missed 14 games. Season before that missed 2 games. Season before that missed 11 games. It's not crazy, but like it's not perfect.
Dude's had one singular full 82 game season, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I have this weird feeling, a bad gut feeling. And I'd love to be able to give you more context because I still think Patrick Kane's going to be filthy this year. But yeah, that one's not really doing it for me. Um, uh, I need one more boom and one more bust, right?
Sure.
Hmm. Okay. I've got an odor around Josh Norris. I don't think he's going to be good this year. I am avoiding him as much as I can. Josh Norris has been disgusting in fantasy before, in a good way, but he's also been extremely avoidable because he is fighting injury, doing whatever. But that's not the big reason for me. I think I think they're tired of the sit around and wait if he's going to be as good as that one crazy season he had. And I think Shane Pinto is going to steal the spotlight. I think Shane Pinto is going to fully steal the 2C spot. I
I think
mean,
I think we're gonna get 90 points out of Stutzelet too.
yep. And you're looking at a Josh Norris who played 50 games this year, played 8 games a year prior, played 66 a year prior. Please tell me tell me if you're seeing anything I'm not seeing, and if you're confident that he's going to play a full season.
No. No, well,
I
and
mean,
and and no, in terms of the injury, right? Because I've been a big Norris fan
yep.
for as long as I know him, and like I want to have faith. I do. I think if he stays healthy, I don't think Pinto's gonna take the spot if he stays healthy. But I think if he misses some time, Pinto gets that opportunity. That's when you can see that's when I could see Norris having some problems getting back into that top six role. Um,
And I mean, Aiden, I'd love to be proven wrong because this is a guy who's put up 35 goals, 20 assists for 55 points, only 66 games. And he does fill other categories decently well. When we're talking fantasy, especially you and I on this podcast, just for our listeners' sake, I will tell you we're talking banger leagues. We're talking leagues that include shots, hits, plus minus, block shots, penalties, everything. Like you want guys who fill the categories more. And when healthy and when clicking, he's doing that. But I'm just not confident we're going to get that.
Power
Through the
play
50
too.
games we saw last year, I didn't see enough to tell me that he's a guy I should go after to fill out my team if I'm trying to win. But I will say, if I'm a rebuilding team in a dynasty format, he's a guy I'm going after when he's low value to see if I can get some found money there. I'm not mad at that. So he is an avoid for me though. Um, one more player I want to go for. Hmm. Okay. I have a really bad shot in the dark pick in the draft once every 2 years. And this player, I'm not going to do it because every time I do it, it goes terribly wrong. But this player feels like that. That player is Daniel Sprong.
Yeah, I can see that.
Daniel Sprong could be a first line right winger this year,
Yeah.
or he could be a fourth line winger. I haven't seen anything yet to tell me that either one of those is more likely than the other. Daniel Sprong could be a guy who's booked for 55 points this year. He could put up 20. He could chip in a lot on the power play. He could not even sniff power play. I love the idea in deeper formats of taking a stab at a guy like that. If you have, say it's a 20 to 23 man roster, taking him in one of the last two rounds, fly at her, do it. But if you're talking a smaller roster, smaller draft, I don't know. I'm not so certain. But for our purposes, I love the idea of taking him. I think that's my third. Now, Aiden, I have a fantasy question for you. It's simple. It's a this player or that player in fantasy, and you could count it as this year, but we're not going to do that because when we talk fantasy, we're talking about our league and how it works. So, which player do you want in a dynasty format going forward? Alexis Lafreniere or Yuri Slivkovsky?
Slavkovsky.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain.
Dude, hits. Slavkovsky is going to turn into this absolute wrecking ball, man. He is going to be, yeah, like he is going to be a human bowling ball, just knocking down defensemen like they're pins. Um, I think he will score more power play goals by a lot. That's extra points.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the path and I say path like he's there already. He's the first line winger in Montreal because they can wait. Lafreniere looks like he's growing into the player that everybody thought he would be and he was supposed to be. Um, but the Rangers are still so win now that if he has a bad couple weeks, he could get buried in that lineup, right?
Mhm.
I just think the leash that Slavkovsky will have in Montreal and some of the extra parts to the game that I don't think Lafreniere rises to the level of. As far as like the players go, I've been a massive Lafreniere fan forever. Like
Mhm. Same.
I think I think I'd have more faith that he's gonna be and he would be a an effective top six forward. Um, but Slavkovsky's ceiling is higher in not just in like I think goals category, but in a lot of other categories too.
Okay, and I've got one more. Two players who put up very similar numbers in fantasy last year. Mika Zibanejad or Ryan Nugent-Hopkins?
I love Zibanejad, man. Nugent Hopkins, it's hard not to choose somebody who's going to play on that Oilers power play is the only thing I'm bumping up against, right? To me,
But
it's
then again, 2 years ago on that Oilers power play, put up obscene numbers. Last year, did not.
yeah, yeah. I'm leaning Zibanejad. It's the Nugent Hopkins could easily find himself on a line that's just scoring 3 goals a game, right? Which that's what I'm bumping up against. 60-40 Zib.
Okay, all right. That will be all for questions on this pod. Now, Aiden, I've been pushing this one off. It's been a hard one for me to get to. For our listeners, we're gonna have to address something pretty big, and I imagine some of you guys have been wondering why we didn't do it off the hop. Um, Aiden initially had it at the top. I wanted to move it to the back. I wanted us to be able to have a fun pod before we go into this, and it's not something I'm necessarily avoiding, but uh, it the hockey world was hit really, really hard last week. Johnny Goodrow and his brother Matthew were riding bikes on the side of a road the night before their sister's wedding when a drunk driver reportedly passed on the shoulder and killed both of them. And Aiden, I can't remember a time in recent memory where the hockey world's been hit this hard. I was absolutely floored. I woke up in the morning because I've been going to bed a little bit earlier. From what I gather, most people saw it the night before everything was confirmed, when because there were some unconfirmed reports flying around. But I saw it in the morning, and in the 3 hours before my coffee break, I couldn't think about a single other thing. This was the only thing on my mind. And I think it's something I'm never going to forget. It's one of those where were you when moments. Because Aiden, this player, Johnny freaking Hockey, I I can't even count how many times I was just so excited watching him play. And then so many times where I was like, oh, sweet, Calgary game on? Yeah, I'll watch Johnny. And I remember a couple years ago, I had that power line of him and Kachuk and him and Kachuk and Lindholm in fantasy. And so I watched their games all the time. And then I found myself still watching them. And then when he went to Columbus, I remember all the Flames fans being pissed. And then he had his reasoning, oh, I just want to be closer to family. I just want to have a good family life away from the spotlight. And I totally got that. It's something I totally understood. I don't know if you've seen the outpouring of tributes from players, but it seemed like he was everyone's favorite person. Whether it was people that were fans of him, whether it was people who were close with him, or even his family. But Aiden, all I can say is this is one that's going to take a while. It's not done soaking in. How are you feeling?
I wouldn't say too different from you. Yeah, like and it's one of those things where the biggest indicator of who this person was and how much he's going to be missed is the stories about him off the ice, right? Not on it. And at the end of the day, it's a tragic loss of a husband and father more than it's a tragic loss of a hockey player, right? That's that's where my mind's been. Um, and I'm very, very like, it gives me a lot of faith in people, just the amount of support that has been going to the family, right? A lot of money raised for the family of Johnny and Matthew. Um, yeah, it rips your heart out, man. And it's gonna, yeah, I think you said it, that it's just gonna sting for quite a while.
So Aiden, earlier in the pod, we talked about how I ended up going to Kelowna. Um, that was a last minute trip for me. A lot of my friends were up there. Financially, I didn't really feel like I could do it, and I had done a lot of fun things this summer. And everyone was already up there. They had got up there late Thursday night. And I got this news, and I just remember thinking at work as we're working on this project, life is so precious. It can be so easily taken from you. And I went, you know what? Screw it. And I booked the last seat on the last flight to Kelowna Friday night. And I went like if someone in the prime of their career doing what they love, who has everything figured out, beautiful, happy wife, kids, amazing family, amazing friends, he can just lose all that so quick. Who am I to not go enjoy having an amazing time with my friends? And so I did that. And I actually couldn't be happier that I did because I don't know, it gave me a different perspective on how to enjoy it. I go do a lot of fun things, and sometimes they don't always end up being as great as you had planned. But with this, like, I just went out and did it. And I remember one of the guys on the trip, his name is Brendan. He's a big hockey fan as well. And are you familiar with the nickname Johnny Ham and Cheese? Okay, so there's lots of stories about how he was a really simple guy and a really plain eater. So they would be going to a fancy sushi restaurant. Johnny Goodrow would stop at a Subway and get a foot-long ham and cheese sandwich, probably just some mayo on it. So we ended up getting known as Johnny Ham and Cheese. And the entire weekend, we were just like, we're getting ham and cheese sandwiches at some point. We got to do it. We have to do it. Didn't end up doing it, but we had a couple drinks in his honor, and we still ended up going to Subway. And I did have a sandwich with ham and cheese on it. It wasn't the plain ham and cheese. I couldn't do it, but I felt like I did the best I could there, but I it was a really big lesson that I took that made me go on that trip. And I hope others can take that as well. We all grieve really differently. I find I tend to avoid the situation when I grieve. This time I mean it's not someone I know personally, but it was someone I was a big fan of and someone who's been I mean from a distance and from a spectator standpoint present in my life for damn like over 10 years now. And I'm not saying my way is the right way, but I hope this tragedy can teach people to never take things for granted. Go on that trip. Go on that walk. Try that restaurant. Like life is damn precious and damn short. The most important thing I could tell you to do is to give someone a call, someone who's important to you a call and tell them that you love them. Because I've had to see that Kevin Hayes just realized he can no longer call one of his best friends now. And he's now lost his brother and one of his best friends in the past few years. This can happen to anyone. Make that call, go to that restaurant, go on that trip. So, Aiden, unless you have anything else, without further ado, let's roll that outro. Thanks, guys.